So many people today in real estate are not able to get cash flow because interest rates are still high, right? And actually they've gone higher even though the Federal Reserve has been cutting interest rates. Interest rates for mortgages have gone higher because of the bond rates. So in addition to that, what else has been happening? Airbnb average daily rates are down. Bookings are down, right? So with some of these certain factors, people are not able to get the same cash flow that they were able to get in other markets. And so we're looking for other ways to get cash flow as real estate investors. How do I still get cash flow? And I'm not talking like $100 a month per unit, like Brandon Turner talks about. I'm not talking $100. $100 a month is not going to change my life. And when one HVAC goes out, there's 48 months of profit. 55 months of profit, right? I can't do that. I need something that cash flows higher, and I need to be able to provide a service to the world that's even more amazing. So I want you to go check out this video where I talk about how co-living is the new wave of the future. And I present to some newbies on how co-living is the ways of the future. I talk a little bit about the legalities of co-living and different strategies that we use for that. And then I go into what's the perfect co-living house method. What do you need to look for in a house to ensure that it spits out thousands of dollars a month in cash flow, not 100 or 200 like we're traditionally taught to think with multifamily or even with single family rentals, okay? So welcome to the highest cash flowing asset in the real estate marketplace today. That's what I believe about co-living. I want you to go check out this video and you can learn how to do it too. Go check it out.
Anyway, shared, I guess it's room for rent is probably the best way to put it right off the bat. But the first time I heard about it, I thought, okay, number one, it's weird. But then my eyes rolled in the back of my head when I saw how much money you can make off of it. And I was like, oh gosh, this is amazing. And I've met so many people who are doing really well with it. But I've never heard anybody with the success that Sam has with it. And Sam, I am so grateful to have you here. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So here's what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut up too. And I'm going to introduce you. Sam, welcome to the Sunrisers. And, just spill it. We want to hear it all.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Big shout out to Brian. I've known Brian for over a decade. He financed my first ever co-living house in Charlotte. So Brian, thanks for the intro. See a good buddy of mine, Brad Holkman, on. Good to see you, buddy. Glad you're here. So yeah, Wendy, do you just want me to dive in? Is that kind of the next step here?
Yes, and you've told me the term co-living.
That's right.
Got it.
How's my audio coming through? I'm actually not at my normal setup. I'm in a co-working space just because I'm doing a little bit of travel today. But am I coming through okay,
yeah,
guys?
You're
Can you hear me?
good.
Give me
You're
a thumbs
good.
up if you got me. Cool.
All good.
And then last question, Wendy, how long do I have with these beautiful people?
Well, people will stay till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the afternoon if you prefer.
Oh, okay.
But 9 o'clock is our breaking point. But if it goes over, it goes over. Nobody will leave. They're weird.
3 hours on co-living. Let's freaking go. I'm ready. Well, I want to start off just by saying, it's an honor to be here. It's always an honor to kind of share a real estate strategy that, frankly, I kind of fell into. And I really do believe in life. There are a few times in life, I said this yesterday on a training I was doing, there's a few times in life where profit actually meets passion and purpose. And I don't think that happens always. Usually, I have a lot of friends that are very like mini Mother Teresa's. They give, but profit is nowhere on their radar. How many of you know somebody like that? Anybody know someone that's just purpose, give, and that's beautiful. And then we all have those friends that are all about money, making deals, but purpose isn't really a part maybe of their mission. And I really think what I'm going to share with you guys today about co-living is like this beautiful marriage of both of those, where you can have profit. No matter what the interest rates are, right? We can still make deals. Brian, I second what you shared, man. It's like, don't wait, right? And so this strategy that I'm going to just share with you and hopefully introduce you guys to today is really a strategy where you don't have to wait, where you can still get cash flow in the market right now. And a little caveat I'll throw in here is you can still get cash flow with on-market deals on the MLS. Without having to go door knock, without having to go send out a bunch of flyers, without having to go, know all the wholesalers in town. You don't have to do that with this strategy, and you can still get cash flow. So that's what I'm going to share with you a little bit today. I am curious, I know we got some of you with your videos on, some of you got your videos off. I'm curious just who here has ever heard of co-living before? Anybody ever heard of co-living? Okay, so awesome. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I got a little presentation. I'm going to dive into it, and then at the end, I'll open it up for some Q&A, and we'll have a fun conversation and just dive in. So I'm going to share my screen. Again, I'm not at my normal setup here, so let me make sure that I can actually play this little slideshow. Give me a thumbs up if you can see that okay. Everybody see that okay? Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Tom. And Tom, thanks for what you shared this morning too. I took several notes on that. It was beautiful, man. All right, guys. So first of all, welcome to Co-Living Real Estate. So we're going to talk a little bit about today. So I'll just share, what we're going to cover today is really, I'm going to share a proven method. When I say proven, meaning this isn't just a theory. A decade and a half ago, this was more of a theory, like, oh, this could work in America. But now co-living is at a place where there are companies that are doing thousands and thousands and thousands of rooms around the United States. Pad Split's already been mentioned on this call. They're probably the biggest in terms of how many rooms they manage, and they just hit 16,000 rooms, which is just barely nothing when we're talking about solving affordable housing. But you're going to learn a proven method to help solve affordable housing. And you're also going to learn with this method, and I'll share some of these numbers with you today, you'll have the ability to retire, and I put that in quotation marks, with as few as 5 rental properties or less. Now, I know that may sound like a tall promise, maybe some crazy, big, bold statement, and I kind of hope it is a bold statement for you, because when I was starting my real estate career, all of my real estate mentors, and maybe you guys can relate to this, would say, hey, Sam, you got to get to 300 units. You got to get to 400 units, 500 units. How many of you kind of grew up hearing these numbers? Like, you can retire when you get to those numbers, right? And I remember thinking, that's a lot. Right? I don't know if I can get there. That's a huge undertaking. But what if I could introduce a strategy to you that was 5 rental properties or less, and you were able to achieve some level of financial freedom with that. And like Wendy said, her eyes rolled in the back of the head when she realized how much money you can make from it. So that's a key part of this strategy as well. And you can do that, if you're looking at my screen, you can do that without the insane time commitment of short-term rentals, or needing to have millions in capital, or even any real estate experience. So how many of you, just wave at me if that's interesting to you and that's something you'd like to learn a little bit more about? Awesome. I see those hands. So we'll dive in. And by the way, I normally have this really cool setup with like multiple screens, and I can see all of you. I don't have that setup today, so I actually can't see everybody or the chat, but I'll dive in after I get done with the presentation. And I've got some cool gifts for you guys today. If you want a co-living calculator, no pressure if you don't want these things, but if you want I got a little co-living training and a co-living calculator, I'll give you guys at the end of today as well. So let's just start with something really basic. First of all, what is co-living? And I'll start with a very basic question. Wave at me on the screen or give me a thumbs up in the chat if you have ever had a roommate before. Yeah, all of us, right? To some extent. Well, that is co-living. So Wendy, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for having me. But no, in all seriousness, that's basically what co-living is. It is, instead of renting out a home to a single family, you are renting it out to multiple renters who each rent a room. And what do? They share a common kitchen. They share a common living space. So co-living does a couple of things, guys. It helps solve affordable housing by providing the local workforce with a lower cost option. One of the things I tell people when I'm talking about co-living, and by the way, I'm very passionate about co-living, not only because I invest and my wife and I own hundreds of co-living doors, but also because I lived in co-living homes for 13 and a half years. So I'm not just talking to you as an investor today. I'm talking to you as someone who this was my way to save money all through my single years. And even when I was dating my wife, who became my wife, we were in co-living environments. And so I know what it's like to actually live in these homes. And what's really cool about this is if you go to any city in America, maybe drop in the chat for me, what's the cheapest housing option usually in any city? What is it? Normally on the marketplace, what's the cheapest thing in any city on the marketplace? Apartments? Yes. What kind of apartment? Wendy says, mom. Yes, mom is definitely the cheapest thing. But what kind of apartment? Usually what? A studio apartment, right? Studio apartment is usually the cheapest option for someone to live in any city, right? With co-living, we are introducing, I like to use the word inventing, because I always wanted to be an inventor when I was a kid. I am inventing a new product that did not previously exist, that is about 50 to 60% of what a studio apartment goes for in a city. So think about it this way. Cheapest thing is a studio. If you become a co-living investor, you're now putting something that did not previously exist on the market at about half the price. That's pretty cool. That's truly solving something. That's truly putting something that literally did not previously exist. So that's how it helps solve affordable housing and providing local workforce with a lower cost option. But what does that mean to you as an investor? Well, to you as an investor, that means more cash flow per home, because you're renting it out to multiple tenants instead of just one tenant, which obviously basic math just means you need less homes to achieve financial freedom. Or in today's market, it means you can actually find deals on market that actually cash flow, right? And not just cash flow a little bit, but can cash flow thousands of dollars a month. So I want to share with you a specific example, and I'm actually going to I'll show you this house. I'm going to show with you because, you know, I think coming on here to you guys, and I know we have some sophisticated real estate investors on here, you know, coming on here to you guys and making that promise of like, you could retire with 5 homes or less. I want to kind of back that with a little bit of data. So I'm going to share with you an example of a home I bought, my wife and I bought a few years back. And when I bought it, you know, the bank came in and I was getting it through a DSCR loan. If you don't know what that is, Brian can help you know what that is, right? But this is a debt service type of a loan. And so the bank came in and they did a rent appraisal on this home I'm about to show you. It's actually a home here in Charlotte. If you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm sitting in Charlotte right now. I'm in South End, and it's 3200 Denson Place. And I'll show you the home right after this in a second. But the bank came in and said, Sam, if you rent this home to a single family, it is going to rent for $1,985 a month. So let's do some quick basic math, guys. If you're looking at my screen, let's say I throw in a $150 budget for maintenance on this home. Now, I'm not going to be paying any utilities, am I? Because I'm going to be renting it to a single family. And of course, they're going to put the utilities in their name. So I won't have any costs for utilities. And let's just say I take 10% for management, which is $200 approximately. And after I pay my maintenance and management, I have $1,635 left over to pay my mortgage, to pay my taxes, to pay my insurance. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. If I had rented this home to a single family, I would have lost about $400 a month at this time, right? How many of you would like to invest in real estate and lose money every month? And that just sounds really exciting to you. Good. Just making sure we're all on the same page. But I did not rent that house out to a single family. I rented it to 8 different individuals, and I rented that home within 3 weeks for $6,450 a month. How many of you prefer that number? Can I get a thumbs up or a wave on the screen? You're like, okay, Sam, you tripled the rent on this home. How did you do that? And there might be that voice in your head that's like, okay, Sam, cool. You're getting more money, but surely there's got to be more maintenance on that home. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there is more maintenance on the home. I'm going to throw in a bigger budget for maintenance. We're going to throw in $400 as a maintenance budget. And you might also be saying, well, Sam, if you're doing co-living and you're renting out the rooms, you're probably not having people put utilities in their name, are you? And the answer to that would be, no, I'm not. I'm paying for the utilities. So I'm going to stick in a $450 budget for utilities. And then you might say, well, Sam, okay, 8 different tenants. I mean, you probably have to pay more for management. There's probably a little bit more nuances to how you manage a property with 8 different people. And I would say, absolutely, there are. So we're going to stick in a $650 management budget. But ladies and gentlemen, even with those expenses, I'm left with $4,950 on the exact same house, even after my higher maintenance, my utilities, and my management, right? So how many of you would prefer that number to the first number? Good. I've got some people who are good investors here. And not only that, now I've got a home. Now I've got a home that is providing affordable housing, it's paying my mortgage, taxes, and insurance, and still cash flows about $2,500 a month, right? So that is what, so that is why a lot of people have switched and said, okay, tell me more about this co-living thing, right? And that's the power of this strategy. And I'll give it a caveat. It's the power of this strategy if done correctly. You know, there's a lot of people out there. I get people will take maybe one of my courses or something. They'll go out, try to do it all on their own. They'll come back and be like, it didn't work. Well, probably didn't work because certain things weren't in place. And we'll talk about some of those things today. So hopefully that's a helpful little analogy for you. Just for fun, let me see if I can do this. I think I can do this. Yeah.
And you're probably gonna get to this, and if not, just let me know. But me, the biggest roadblock to what you're talking about is getting tenants together. Like, I don't know you, I don't want to live with you, that kind of things. I'm hoping you'll at least address that issue.
I can 100% address that issue.
Good.
I want to show this. I just want to show the home too, because I want you to understand that for 8 people to live in a home, this wasn't some $1 million Charlotte mansion. So can you guys see my screen? Give me a thumbs up. You can see my screen here. Got it. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So yeah, this is the actual home I was giving you that example on. I just wanted to kind of share it with you, and we'll talk about a few things that you need to look for in a perfect co-living home. It wasn't some crazy big mansion. It was a home that was decently nice. We bought it for $315,000. This was after COVID broke out, so prices were still kind of rocking pretty high. And I'll show you the floor plan for this house in just a moment. And by the way, if you are dropping things in the chat, just with my computer setup, I'm not able to see that 100% right now, but I will go back, and so keep dropping it in, and we'll go back and take questions. And Rick, thanks for coming on and sharing that as well. So I just wanted to kind of show that house. And obviously one thing we'll talk about is, in Charlotte, at least, parking is very important. So you can see on this screen, that's one of the things we look for. And today we're going to give you kind of a method, if you will, on how to find what I call the perfect co-living home. And so we'll dive into that as well. So I'm going to get back to my presentation, and we will go from there. Okay, so I already went through this. I already showed you guys the example there. So let me tell you just a little bit about, and there will be some lessons in this. Let me tell you a little bit about how this method kind of evolved, how I fell into it. And I think through this, you'll start to understand some of those questions that you might have in your head. So my first co-living house was really what most people on here would probably call a house hack. It was in a town called Charlottesville, Virginia, where I'm originally from. I'm originally from that area. And I bought this 3-bedroom, 3-bath condo, and I lived in one room. I was single. I was running my first entrepreneurship foray was I built and scaled and just recently exited a chain of martial arts schools. And so I lived for free. I made a little bit of money each month because I had 2 roommates, and that was just me being a single guy building my business at the time, right? So I didn't really think about co-living at the time. Then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I bought this co-living home right here. This is a 1336 land grant. I've since sold it, but it's right here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And when I started this, I had no leases, or what we now call membership agreements. I didn't have any house rules. I didn't have any parking arrangements. By the way, these are all things that for co-living to really work well, you need. I didn't have any of that, right? But I lived in one room and I rented out 3 bedrooms. I even had this one guy who squatted for in my house while I was living there for 4 months. I couldn't kick him out because I had no agreement with him. It was the worst thing ever, right? I was just trying this, like many of us when we started real estate, right? We're just trying to figure it out as we go. But in this house right here, I had fun. It worked. I had 4 people sharing a house, and one day I was out walking in the neighborhood, and I had this so he was actually my first real friend in Charlotte, because I just came here, kind of threw things in my car and moved to Charlotte. And he was a banker. He worked for SunTrust at the time, and SunTrust merged with BB&T. Now it's Truist. And he said, "Hey, Sam, I know you're renting your house out by the room. How much are you making from your house?" And again, I wasn't a real estate investor. I'm running martial arts schools. Remember, I'm just I don't know. If you count me as a renter, I'm making $2,870. And he was a banker. He was really good with numbers. And he was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, is that surprising? Was that surprising?" He goes, "Yeah, it's kind of surprising because I know that area, and that house would normally only rent for $13.50. So you're doubling the rent." He's like, "That's pretty cool." And the way he said it, something about it is when it clicked for me. And I thought, wait, I want to get to financial freedom. I want to get there as fast as humanly possible. I want the shortcut. And so I kind of just it clicked for me then. And I realized and I realized at that time, I was it's not even that hard. Right? And I started to put some of these systems in place. So that's where I began to see it as an investment strategy. And guys, in case you can't tell by the passion with which I'm talking to you guys, I'm a little bit of a push the limits, go all in, figure stuff out kind of a guy. And so I said, well, it's working with 4 bedrooms. Would it work with 5 rooms? Could I get 5 people to share a house? So I bought this house. It's in Pineville, picture of it right there. I've since sold it. But, and in this home, we had something called, and I know your brain might be thinking about this, is kind of, even kind of what Rick was mentioning a second ago of like, we had what we call peanut butter problems. I'm going to share with you guys does anybody here know what a peanut butter problem is? Sometimes you don't know unless you've done co-living before. So Connie, here's what peanut butter problems are. I get a call actually in this house. Let's say I'm not gonna tell their real names. We got John and Susie living in the house, and John calls me up, and I'm the landlord. I don't have a property management company or anything like that anymore. I'm just managing my couple of homes that I have, right, by myself. Still working my job, running my martial arts schools. And he goes, Sam, we have a problem in this house. I'm like, cool. Like, what's the problem? He goes, man, I left my peanut butter out, and Susie came down in the kitchen and she ate my peanut butter, and I am upset. I am mad. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, if these are the types of problems I have to deal with, I never want another co-living home ever again in my life. This is crazy. I'm trying to run my business. I got these dang peanut butter problems. What the heck? But guys, what we did is we created systems, right? And I know systems is kind of this big word that's just thrown out there a lot, but we created legit systems. So what we started to do in this house is where I first started is I said, I've got to label everything. If I'm going to have 5 or 4 or 3 or 6 or 7 or 8, we'll talk about that in a moment, people live together, I need to label where every cabinet that everybody has. So room 1 gets room 1 cabinet. I need to label every space in the refrigerator. I need to label every space in the freezer. I need to label where these people put their freaking the laundry detergent, right? Like, I need to give them a space so that it's their particular space. And so we came up with this whole labeling strategy for people to get along. And we kind of like solved the peanut butter problem. And I was like, wait, it's now working with 5 people. I said, okay, I'm going to go down the street. I'm going to buy another home, primary residence. I was buying a home a year at this point. Brian was helping me. Brian, I think you probably even financed this home for me. And I said, but will it work with 6 bedrooms? And I bought this home literally like a quarter mile away. And we had bigger problems with 6 people. We had parking problems. You can actually see from this picture, if you're looking at my screen, I actually had to add some concrete because the HOA was getting on me and saying, Sam, you people can't park in the street, even though street parking was allowed. We got into this big fight, and I was like, fine, I'm just going to add concrete. And so I made this huge driveway. But again, then what we did with this home is I said, I'm going to come up with a little map. I got 6 people sharing this home. I'm going to come up with a little map where John parks, or room 1, it wasn't John, it was like room 1 parks here, and room 2 parks here, and room 3 parks here. And I came up with this little map. And again, I solved that challenge. And so I figured out a way to help these people get along. And then we created systems through all these things. We created this plug and play system. And soon I started testing with 7 bedrooms. I started testing with an 8-bedroom home. I even started testing with a 9-bedroom home. There's that home I just showed you. That one was 8-bedroom. We just launched yesterday. Literally yesterday, we launched a 10-bedroom home. One of my students in Concord launched an 11-bedroom home. And again, if that blows your mind and you're like, holy cows, how does that even possible that 11 people share that home? We'll talk about that more in depth, but the short answer is you have systems for how everything is run in that home, and we push that limit. Now, how many of you guys know this guy? Give me a wave at me if you know this guy on the screen. If you're a real estate investor and you've been around the world a little bit, you know Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. He wrote the book on real estate, so to speak, right? And passive income and all these things. And I was at an event and I had an opportunity to meet him and speak with him for a bit as part of a mastermind that I'm a part of. And I only had like 3 or 4 homes at the time, and I'm going to be honest, this was probably 8-9 years ago, and I was a little nervous about doing this strategy because I didn't see a lot of other people doing that. I had a lot of the same questions that you probably have, like, will this actually work? Will I get in trouble with the city? What about regulations? Blah, 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 blah. And I walk up to Robert and I say, Robert, I'm doing this thing. I'm renting out rooms. Like, do you think I should do this? Like, should I go all in on this? And sometimes in life, you know, and that's why I'm so grateful for this group, and you guys should be grateful for being a part of groups like this. It's so powerful, is because sometimes in life, you don't need the strategy. You just need the vote of confidence. You guys ever been in a place where you're just like, you just need someone to tell you, like, go do it. I saw that hand, Brian, thanks. Like, just go do it. And Robert looks at me and he goes, Sam, that is the wave of the future. You are ahead of the curve. You should go all in on this strategy. Like, that's absolutely coming to America in a huge, big way. And guys, whatever it was, that was what gave me the confidence to go all in on co-living. We started buying homes, we raised capital for homes, we started managing homes, and it really grew and expanded from there. And then he leaned in, just for the funny part of the story, Robert Kiyosaki leans in, and if you follow him at all, he's kind of doomsdayish right now. He thinks the whole world's going to blow up, and he's like, man, and when crap hits the fan, I even know how I'm going to co-live my house. He's like, I already know where I'm going to put the walls and break my 4,500 square foot on the lake into 6 different units. And I laughed and he laughed and it was kind of a joke. And I said, well, if it's good enough for Robert Kiyosaki, it's good enough for me. So that was what really gave me that vote of confidence. And since that moment, guys, it's grown. Here's an article of a $60 million co-living investment right here in our town, Charlotte, North Carolina. It started off as like a multifamily project, but then it became like co-living, like a rent by the room, but in a huge multifamily building, which is really, 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 really cool. That's a developer out of Austin. And then I want to hit on one more thing before I give you guys some nuts and bolts on what you should be looking for if you're looking for like what I call the perfect co-living home that cash flows thousands of dollars. And a lot of people will ask me, well, Sam, how does the government view this? How is the government looking at co-living? And I have some really good news for you guys. The government, for the most part, and again, there's different levels of government, loves co-living. But let's talk about the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development. They're responsible for helping create affordable housing. And obviously we know that, in October 2021, half of Americans said affordable housing was a major problem. That was up 10 percentage points from 2018. I'm sure it's way higher now. I just don't have the updated stat, right? Here we are 4 years later from even that. In 2020, right? So again, this is worse now. 46% of American renters spent 30% or more of their income on housing, including 23%. Guys, 23% is tens and tens of millions of people who spend at least 50% of their income on their housing. There's a shortage by all estimates, and I think this number is extremely low. There's a shortage of 7.3 million affordable and available rental units for renters with low incomes. That's up 8%, and 8%, we're talking 8% of millions, right? So it's a lot, right? And then we all know the stats about students coming out of college with tons of debt, not being able to pay that, not getting the job they thought they were able to. So in January of 2021, and I will drop this link in the chat. I can't do it right now because I don't have my setup right now, but I will do it when I'm done sharing my screen here. But in January of 2021, the U.S. Department for Housing and Urban Development came out and put out this 3-page notification. I'm kind of flashing on my screen here. The 2 pages and then the 3rd page here. And basically what they said is shared housing is a viable housing option. Like, it's a real thing, y'all. And they also said, we also believe that this can help solve affordable housing. And then they took it a step further and they said you can use what they call housing choice vouchers for guaranteed government-backed rent on a room. You can use vouchers so you can get, and again, my company doesn't do this at this current moment. It's the government. You got to go through their process, but you could get government-backed rent on renting rooms in your home. And it's not a cheap amount. In Charlotte, one of my students was researching this, and she said that the voucher amount in Charlotte for a room is close to $846 if you include utilities. And guys, I rent some rooms for $700. I rent some rooms for $800. So it's not a cheap price that they're offering, which is really, 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 really powerful. So I think that's a huge endorsement of co-living, and it was just really cool to see that coming from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, just giving their stamp of approval, saying we know this is growing, we encourage this, and we encourage every local municipality to pave the way for this, and we are allowing vouchers now, which is really, really, really powerful. So I'll drop the link to that in a little bit. Couple other quick things that I think are important to wrap your head around. Who the heck lives with 9 other people? Well, first of all, I did. And I was making 6 figures. I had a great job. I was running martial arts schools. But I enjoyed it, right? It was fun. I had a community, and we'll talk about how you can do this by building a community in just a moment. But I want everybody on this call to think about somebody in your world that makes $15 to $25 an hour. I want you to think about every time you take a plane trip, there's a baggage handler. That's what they're making. Now you think about an airport. They have tens of thousands of employees that make between $15 and $25 an hour. Right? You think about call center workers. Sally's an actual person. That's not her actual picture, but she's an actual person. She lives in one of our Houston homes. She's a call center worker. She's 28. She makes $15 an hour plus commissions. She can't afford a studio apartment in a decent part of town in Houston. Sorry. Like, she's just not after tax. Like, not after tax and buying food, right? John is a smash repair worker, right? He gets some small commissions, but I think he's making $18 an hour, right? And he's 30 years old, right? Frank's a baggage handler. He's 38. He makes $22 an hour and 50 cents. And he works for the Houston airport, right? These are people that they can't afford after tax, with inflation, with the cost of housing that's gone up. They need another option. So they're being driven into alternative methods. And this is why co-living is, frankly, I believe one of the fastest growing asset classes right now. I think it was Airbnb for a while was all the rage, and now it's co-living, right? So that's an example of just who in your world. You go through Target, you go to Walmart, you go to all these different places. Those are the people that are living in this home. And we threw a couple things in here to share with you guys that people love the experience and we're making a difference. But the one thing I want to talk about here is community. That there are some companies out there that just talk about co-living being, don't have any common spaces in your home. Every square inch of the home needs to be another bedroom. And that's not really the approach that I take. For my company to manage a co-living home, we have to have a common space where people can connect, and we put some cool desks in there and we make it so people can kind of co-work as they're living in this home. They've got spaces to work and to work online or take a Zoom call, right? And these homes are beautiful. When you walk into one of our homes, it's an amazing, we're doing everything we can to foster a sense of community in the homes. And these are some pictures from one of our Houston homes. Now, this is not my personal home. It's one of my students' homes. But every Saturday, everybody in the home, he's got 7 people that live in this home in Houston. They all get together and they all barbecue together, right? And there's an epidemic in America that nobody talks about, and it's loneliness. Right. And the Surgeon General of the United States has already come out and said this is actually killing a bunch of people. The effects of loneliness, especially on males specifically, is the same as effects as smoking 2 packs. Like the health effects are the same as smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day. Like that's how powerful it is. Right. So I think, again, what's beautiful as you guys ponder this strategy and think about this strategy is that you get to make a difference if you do this correctly. I'm not, people a lot of times I'll be sharing this message with people and they'll be like, well, Sam, that sounds a lot like a boarding house or a rooming house. And guys, I've seen some people do it in that way. That is not what I'm promoting here. And I'll show you some pictures of a house if you want me to. That's like, you'll walk in, you feel like it's a 5-star Airbnb, right? And there's a saying, if you're a note taker, I'd love for you to jot this down. It's like, I had a guy when I did an episode on Bigger Pockets about 2.5 years ago. Do you have any Bigger Pockets fans here? People listen to Bigger Pockets? That was episode 560 when Brandon Turner invited me on to just talk about the co-living strategy. And, I had this guy, after my episode went live, I had this guy from Berlin, Germany call me. And he kind of started by making fun of me. He's like, ha, 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 you think this is the newest, coolest strategy. He's like, Sam, we've lived like this in Europe for decades, buddy. This ain't new. And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. He's like, in Berlin, nobody can afford an apartment. Like millennials can't afford an apartment, dude. Everybody rents a room here. And he goes, in Berlin and in a lot of the world, Sam, the room is the new apartment. And guys, I don't know what it was about what he said, but it was an aha moment for me. And I went, America's headed that way with the inflation that we've had, with how things are getting expensive, with incomes not keeping up pace with inflation and housing prices. Like, we're headed that way. We're maybe a little fortunate. We haven't been there for decades, but we're headed that way. And so I want you to just jot that down. That's kind of the premise that we're operating on. Is the room is the new apartment, right? And you get to create these communities in these homes. So the last thing I'll kind of share here before I dive into 7 things you need to have in every co-living home, which is what I really want to, that's the nuts and the bolts. It's a tactical piece I want you to take away from today, is my wife and I got together. I guess this was about 6 years ago now. And this was when we had 50, 60 members in our co-living homes. And we said, we want to make a difference on their life. We want this to be a community. And so we kind of doubled down on this and we created something called the Thrive Journal. And the Thrive Journal, I'm just sharing this with you because I want you to understand kind of the purpose of this that I believe can be infused with. Now, again, there's people doing it or doesn't have the purpose infused with it, but this is how I'm trying to share it and it is with this purpose. And we created this journal, and this journal teaches them about meditation. It teaches them about goal setting, teaches them about healthy habits. It teaches them about budgeting. And we offer every one of our residents, every one of our members a gift card. It's a $150 gift card. It might be $200 now, actually, but we give them a gift card where if they do this exercise, like a journal where they fill out these different exercises and they change their life, they actually take the action and do these different exercises that are in the book, that they get this gift card. I had someone recently, my property manager forwarded me an email, somebody living in one of our homes, and he said, Sam, I've always wanted to have a gratitude practice, but I never had one until I finished the Thrive Journal. And now I have a consistent daily gratitude practice thanks to the Thrive Journal. Thank you so much for giving me that. We give every person that when they move in. Thank you so much for that. And by the way, give me my $150. I completed it, right? I was like, okay, we'll give you $150 and congratulations on your gratitude practice. So there's just some really cool things you can do when you're bringing people together in community. How many of you, by the way, give me a thumbs up if you think that's awesome. Like that's a cool way to provide housing. That's just not profit. There's a little bit more to it, which is really beautiful. All right, so here's what I'm going to kind of end with, and then we'll just dive into some questions. I want to give you something that we've perfected over the last decade called the perfect co-living house method. So what does a co-living house look like? What is the right home? And I'm going to just share with you a couple of things. This is the floor plan of the home I showed you, the 8-bedroom home. And man, when I saw this home, by the way, it sat on the market longer because it was so boxy. Write that down if you're a note taker. Boxy. It's a technical term, y'all. It's the opposite of open concept. Right? And when I walked into this home, you can see, I don't know if you can see my mouse or not, but you walked into the foyer at the bottom right. There was a living room. Guess what that became? A bedroom. There's this big sunroom. Guess what that became? Big, huge bedroom. Then there was already 3 bedrooms. So this first floor became 5 bedrooms. We added a full bath, but that's beside the point. We'll talk about that in a moment. We added 5 bedrooms. Right? Now this dining room and this kitchen became the common area. We put some little desks in there. We added a second refrigerator. We'll talk about that. And then you go downstairs, and keep in mind, I was drooling when I saw this house because I'm like, I don't even have to add walls. I had a couple of doors, and this home is 8 bedrooms already. And a lot of times we have to add some walls. We have to add some closets. Maybe we add a bathroom because we're always trying to keep, jot this down if you're a note taker, we're always trying to keep at a minimum a 3-to-1 bedroom to bathroom ratio. Now there are some tech companies or some big companies that'll tell you 4-to-1's fine, 5-to-1's okay. And I think if we're going to do this model, let's do it as best we possibly can. And so I would strongly recommend, and we found from testing that 3-to-1 is going to be the minimum that we recommend, basically. And so downstairs, you had this big family room, you had a common laundry, you had a bedroom and a bedroom. So this is how we took that house that was 2,450 square feet, and it became 8 full bedrooms, right? It's pretty powerful. So that's what we're looking for. So I've already kind of shared this house with you, so I'll kind of zip through it. It was me just sharing some numbers. Here's a house I have in Fairview, North Carolina, right? Nice enough, not crazy. It's one thing I want you to see is like when you're providing workforce housing, you don't have to have a pool. You don't have to be 5-star Airbnb. You don't have to have a pool and a hot tub and a all the crazy amenities, right? This home, they told us when we did the market analysis, it would rent for $2,250. We rented it for $5,250. Here's one right in Charlotte off of Sugar Creek Road. And so we rehabbed this one big. They told us it would rent for $1,985 a month. We rented it for $6,450 a month. And here's kind of a floor plan. So one of the things we look for, the number one thing we look for in a co-living house is the size of the home. The size of the home. So I'm going to give you a formula right now that I'd love for you to jot down. If you bring me, a 1,500 square foot home, without even walking that home, I know that that's at least 4 bedrooms, if not more, but it's a minimum of 4 bedrooms. And then every 250 square feet that you bring me of a house that's bigger, so you bring me a 1,750 square foot home, it's at least 5. It adds a room, right? And that's just because I know that square footage can be converted into rooms, right? So if you bring me a 2,000 square foot house, and by the way, that's the smallest house my team will even look at is 2,000, which is 6 rooms. 2,250 is 7, 2,500 is 8, 2,750 is 9, 3,000 would be 10. You guys get the general math. So this house was 2,990 square feet, and I'm going to show you how we got 10 rooms out of it. Now it actually ended up becoming 9 rooms, but I'll share with that in a moment. So you walk in, and I think this floor plan, again, we're kind of looking for these awkward layouts. You're looking for these weird layouts. You're looking for a home that nobody else really wants to buy because it's just like a little weird, right? It's boxy. Everybody wants the open concept. So this one had this big bedroom here, had this bedroom, had this bedroom, had this bedroom. So on the first floor, it had this breakfast room and this living room. So that became the common area. Which, if you go back here, these are the pictures of that actual home. There's the common area right there. You can kind of see in the upper part, that's the only part of the room that's the only part of the home we furnish. Remember, if the room is the new apartment, they're going to bring in their own things to their room, right? So they're furnishing their own room. So I wanted to share that with you. So on the upstairs, it became 4 bedrooms. Now downstairs, it was already really boxy. It already had this weird bathroom layout, had these 4 rooms, and this office would have been converted into a room, and then this other bedroom would have been converted into a room. But in the last minute, I told my contractor, I drew this big red line around this, and so I said, I just want one big, huge master suite with a private bath. And so instead of 10, but we could have gotten 10, we ended up being 9. But that's the floor plan that we kind of look for. Here's some other criteria. I'm going to just rapid fire through this, guys, so we can take some questions. Ample parking. Look, in Charlotte, in Houston, in Dallas, in Austin, these are cities, in Jacksonville, right? These are cities that you kind of need a car. Like public transportation is not amazing. Right now, if you're in San Francisco, I've got one of my students has 450 rooms all in San Francisco or Oakland. Look, if you're in San Francisco and Oakland, he doesn't give a crap about parking. Like everybody takes public transportation. So this is a nuanced criteria. But for most of the cities, right, that we're going to be investing in, you know, you're going to need to look for parking. And the formula that we've found, and you could be like, Sam, how in the heck did you even get to this formula? But it's just a ton of trial and error, a decade and 3 years of trial and error. 2/3 the number of people that are in the home is how many parking spots I need. So if I have 9 people in a home, I need 6 parking spots. Now, that could be street parking. That could be me adding a little bit of parking to the right or the left, or a lot of it could be street parking, right? We usually look for homes that are in neighborhoods that have a lot of street parking, right? But that's something you're going to want to check on. No HOA. And you might, does anybody here love an HOA? Like, do I have any yeah. I got people who if you're part of an HOA and you love it, that's the rarity, right? So imagine now trying to do a creative strategy where you might have a few cars extra in the parking lot or in the driveway. And I've tested this, guys. Don't fight me on this one. It's like I've hired the lawyers for, I spent basically almost 5 figures on one case with an HOA fighting on Coliving. At the end, I was just like, that wasn't worth it, right? Like, why did I go through that year and a half of craziness? So we just don't do HOAs, right? Split level homes are nice. They kind of spread people out a little bit more. So you're looking for a house with a split level. We only look for 6 rooms. You know, if you go back to the formula I just taught you, and I know it just like dumped that formula on you, so we can go into that slower if you want, but 2,000 square feet is going to be a 6-bedroom home at minimum. We only look for 6-bedroom homes at minimum, right? So 2,000 and plus square feet. That's the square footage formula I shared with you guys. We're always looking for those funky layouts. The more closed in as it is, the more interesting of a layout it is, the better. Usually that means it's probably homes in the 80s and the 90s that were built. I know on this call, we probably have some awesome, anybody on here, you're a fixer and a flipper. You don't mind a 6-figure rehab. You like that. Felipe, you're that. Brian, you're that. Awesome. That is not me. I want to throw up a wall or two, take a half bath, convert it to a full bath, and call it a day, fill it, and then cash flow thousands of dollars a month. That's what I want to do. So for me, for speed, I want minor rehab work, right? But if you have that skill, great. I've got some friends right now that have converted their entire flipping business to only flipping co-living homes, and guess who buys them? Co-living investors. And guess who buys them at a premium? Co-living investors, because they're setting them up as co-living homes from the flip. And it's like this whole new exit strategy for you guys that are fixer and flippers, right? And I will guarantee that I'll buy it. I'll put a contract on it even before you flip it, right? Because there's a demand for this now, right? So you're looking for a house. So anyway, that's that. Not too old. We try to get things that are 1970s or newer. You know, that's when a lot of codes got updated around the United States. So plumbing got some technological updates, electrical got some technological updates. And so we're just kind of looking for that. And then the more bathrooms, the better, which we kind of shared with you. That 3-to-1 ratio. Now, in a perfect world, guys, with co-living, here's what we've learned over the last decade. Perfect world would be 1-to-1. And this is why, and don't get me started on this. Don't get me started talking about this, because I will talk about this for an hour and we will be here till 3, Wendy. But I am building 2 buildings from the ground up that are co-living. I'm building a duplex in Charlotte that is going to be 17 bedrooms and 17 bathrooms. That's awesome. I'm building one in Asheville. It's going to be 1919, a duplex, right? And it's like, so that's perfect, but you can't really get that unless you build. And building, by the way, I'm not a builder, so I'm learning this, and it's a pain. It's a pain, right? It's annoying. It's a long process. It's not for the faint at heart. But that's like the future, right, of what will happen with this strategy, right? So more bathrooms, the better, obviously. And then you want to make the common spaces so beautiful. You want to make the common spaces amazing. You want people to walk in and go, am I in an Airbnb? Am I in a 5-star Airbnb? I'm not saying you need the pool and the hot tub and all that, but you want that feel to it, right? And so we deck out. I bring in a professional designer for the common spaces. It looks amazing, right? And it's really, really, really cool. Now, a couple things that aren't on my sheet that I'll just rapid fire here. Jot these down if you're a note taker. One is nice enough. You're not looking for luxury. I don't really agree with this whole luxury concept of co-living. I think it's nice enough. You're providing workforce housing. These are people who, they need a place to sleep. They need a safe place. They need a quiet place, and they need a clean place. Safe, quiet, and clean. Those are the 3 things, by the way, you have to do to scale co-living, right? And then public transportation. If you're close to public transportation, you're close to a bus stop, you're close. I bought a house recently close to the light rail, further down on South Boulevard. And it was like, boom, filled in a week. It was crazy, right? If you're close to public transportation, that's a huge plus, right? So you want to make that a bonus to that house if it does have that, right? Any extra spaces that you can convert to bedrooms, garages, basements. That's also obviously a big plus if you're in the business of converting, right? So it took me a long time to discover the hard way of going through all these different other strategies. I didn't even tell you guys that part of my story of all the things I invested in before I did co-living real estate, but now we're all in on co-living real estate, right? And so I think it's really the best way to marry purpose with profit. And I usually share a couple of examples and testimonials, but I want to kind of end with, before I open up for Q&A, I just want to tell a quick little story. If this strategy seems crazy to you, I want you to think back to when you first heard about Uber. Anybody remember when they first heard about Uber? And you were like, hold on, wait a second, let me get this straight. Some random app is going to send you somewhere and some stranger is going to jump in the back of your car, not mug you or kill you. And then you're going to drop them off at another, some random location. Like, yeah, that'll never work, right? Or Airbnb when it first came out. That'll never work, right? Someone's gonna rent your second home on the lake, not destroy it. And like, that's going to work? Like, yeah, right. And now we have Uber, right? And now we have Airbnb and we take it for granted. And co-living is in that same stage. It's that stage where most of what I get when I present, a lot of what I get when it's like, hold on, Sam, I'm like, what, 11 people? That sounds crazy. No way that'll work, right? But now we're doing it times 500 rooms and in our course and in our probably another 1,000 rooms just in that group, right? And so it's like, and it's being done at scale. And so I just invite you to kind of just suspend your belief there for a second and really lean into a strategy that I think can set a lot of people financially free with only a few homes and at the same time help solve affordable housing. So what I'd love to do is just I'd love to just give you guys a gift and then open it up, and I'll hang out here and do Q&A for as long as you guys want. I guess maybe not as long as you guys want. I said that yesterday and I was up until 11 p.m. on a presentation, but we've got this co-living calculator that helps you just like compare deals. So if that's something that's interested you, if you want to dive deeper, I'll just kind of throw this in the chat. If you text the word co-living to 704-610-0425, we'll give you a free calculator and we'll give you a 3-part co-living training that just kind of deep dives a little bit more into this strategy. So I'll drop that in the chat, but I wanted to flash it up on the screen, take a screenshot of that, take a quick picture of that if you're interested, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay.
So
I'm giggling with excitement, and like there's like 100 people that have questions.
Yeah.
So raising your hand, folks, will really help me. But I have to say this, since I lead the group, I get to ask the first one. I really don't have any questions. I can't believe how awesome this presentation has been. You've hit everything, and I'm blown away by your story. I had no idea that you were immersed in living in a co-living yourself. That, to me, that blows my mind. That's amazing. And I wish you could have seen all the questions in the chat box as you were talking, because people were doing exactly what I was thinking with all these questions, asking all this stuff, not even giving you a chance to get through. I was like, simmer down, folks, and just let him talk for a minute. This is mind blowing, all the stuff that you're doing, and it's so cool. I'm blown away by the 17 room duplex you're building. That's just crazy awesome. I'm assuming you're funding that through a syndication or a fund or a group of people. How are you doing that?
Well, I guess the long story goes, my wife and I have been selling off our Airbnbs to kind of reposition into co-living. And so we're using our own capital on this first one. And then
that's
we build a bunch more, then
That's beautiful. Okay, so that's not an option for most people.
Yeah.
But I think the main question that I've seen come over again, and yes, folks, I promise I'm going to let you all ask stuff, is the financing. Everybody goes, how are you going to finance this? How are you going to finance this? It's always my first question too, because, that's my background. Financing is not the problem. Yeah. You can always find money. Everybody hear me loud and clear. You can always find money. And I posted it in the chat that, conventional will do this. Brian, raise your hand. So conventional will do this. There's ways of making that happen. There are DSCR loans that will do this. They're private money. If you're not in Orlando right now, you should have been there because you're learning more about private money. You'd be surprised at how many people you know that will jump on the bandwagon and would love to have a piece of this action. There's so many ways to get this financed. So don't let the financing stop you. Learn how to do it. That's the key. And you listen to somebody that's tried and true. Sam's made all these mistakes already.
A lot
And
of it.
he's made them all. He can tell you exactly what they are. You need to, don't try and take what he's telling you to do and twist it to work for you. Do exactly what he's saying, because the formula that he's using works. Okay, Brian, you were the first one. Brian Biernat. I have
Very
to
good.
say your last name now because I told you I'm the name slayer. So
Yep.
you're first in line. You go ahead.
Okay, Sam, we've got two of these. This is a great presentation. My only question, and this is the first big one. Just get into the number of unrelated occupants, right? So in Jackson, Mississippi, where I'm at, it's 6, and I have a 6-bedroom, 3-bath mobile that's a co-living house, and it's doing great. We have a 7-bedroom that was a 5.3. We turned into a 7.3, and I created the parking. The driveway is not the parking area; it's the driveway. Yeah. But how do you? I think we're pushing the limit on that one. But how do you get around? What's the? You at 9 and 10 bedrooms. How do you address that issue? Be quiet and listen.
Yeah, Brian. No, thanks for bringing it up. Does everybody kind of understand what he's asking? He's saying, hey, a lot of cities or jurisdictions might have a restriction or a rule around the number of unrelated occupants in a house. So. It is, I want to be very clear. First of all, I'm going to give the best answer I can in about 3 minutes because it is a big question. It is something I've studied ferociously over the last, because I didn't really think about it, frankly, when I first started this model. But then as I started to scale, as I started to teach it, and then my students were like doing this in different cities, I was like, holy cow, I need to really understand the legalities of this. So basically the long story short is, when I first started scaling this, I went to a company that was doing this. We talked about PadSplit, and PadSplit was kind of the leading, and PadSplit doesn't own homes. PadSplit manages a lot of homes. And I'm friends with a lot of the executives over at that company, and I reached out to their head legal department. And I said, all right, guys, like I'm scaling with my students. You guys have, at that point, I think they had 5,000 rooms in like 15 cities. And I was like, how are you guys doing this? Because I know you guys have 10 and 11 and even like at one point they had like a 14-bedroom home. I was like, how is this working? And so I got on the call with their head legal lawyer that creates their strategy. And he said, well, Sam, I'm going to give you the answer. He's like, it's 2 things. I said, okay, tell me. He goes, number 1, trash cans and grass. And I was like, what? He's like, trash cans and grass. He goes, 90% of our complaints from the city, from whatever, come from neighbors. When you don't take care of these co-living homes and the trash cans were left too long and the grass was too long and the shutters are falling off and they just don't tee up with the home. I'm like, that's not a problem with me. I teach my students. We all take care of our homes. Our homes are just as nice, if not nicer, than every other home in the neighborhood. I said, tell me the legal strategy. He goes, okay, I'll tell you the legal strategy. He goes, Sam, you know how like and if you guys can see me on the screen, I promise this will help a little bit. You know how like an LLC owns a home? And I'm like, yeah, like all my homes are in an LLC. I get that. He goes, so what we do is we don't have leases. We don't lease our home to 8 or 9 different individuals. We lease it to another company. So we're technically leasing our home to another company, which in the United States, a company is considered one person. So I'm leasing my home to another corporation that I also own. And this company happens to be, and this is what he explained to me. He goes, this is a membership company. This is like a subscription service company. This is like a fraternity club. This is like a country club. And it has hundreds of members. And all of these people have what they call membership agreements. Not leases. It literally says, this is not a lease. This is a membership agreement. That membership agreement gives people the ability to use a room in the home, and it gives them a lot of other benefits for being a part of this club, right? And he said, that is our legal strategy and how we're using this and how we're getting around. It's the loophole we're playing. And I said, hold on, pause. I need to get my lawyer on the call. So I got my lawyer on the call. This is a few years ago, and we hashed it out for the next hour. And I got it. I got the legal strategy. I want to be very clear on this call. I am not giving legal advice. I am not a lawyer myself, but I have lawyers that we pay very well. and this is the moment where I switched my entire company and everything we teach. We spent tens of thousands of dollars creating a structure that is a membership agreement, subscription service type structure. So when someone enrolls in one of my homes, they are not a tenant. They are a member of this club, and that club is then renting the home. Again, may sound like a complicated legal strategy. It's frankly not that complicated once you get it. It took us a while to create the document and create the structure and do it legally and correctly. But that is how that is the legal kind of strategy for a lot of how these things are happening, and how these tech companies a lot of times are breaking into the space. So we modeled them, we spent the money, we created our membership agreements, and now we share that with our students, and we help support them in setting up that membership agreement. Now, I'll say one more thing about this topic, and again, I could talk about it for an hour because it's something I've really researched. The zoning restrictions in most jurisdictions that limit the number of unrelated people are some of the most outdated and discriminatory rules that are still on paper in the United States. I'll give you an example. In Atlanta, there's a county in Atlanta, and this is how their code reads. This is how their zoning code reads. You can have up to 5 unrelated people, unlimited number of related, and an unlimited number of domestic servants. When do you think that was written? Not anytime recently, right? And so these are just things that will have to be updated as co-living grows. We're already seeing this across the United States, by the way, but they're old. They're 70, 80, 90 years. I mean, they were written a long time ago, guys. So some of these, but we're seeing super positive movement. I'm a big advocate for co-living. So we talk on stages about this. We promote this. Washington just came out. The state of Washington just came out and said, cannot limit unrelated people in a home. It's legal here, right? We're seeing small jurisdictions. The governor of Colorado just came out in July and said it is illegal for any local jurisdiction to limit the number of unrelated people in a home. New state law. He literally came on record. He said, if a bunch of adults want to get together and live in a home, that is none of the government's business. That's not something we ever should regulate. And so that's that. Now, there are some big tech companies that have fought a lot of these legal battles, and they've won a lot of these legal battles. Most of the battles have been fought in Atlanta, and they've won a lot of them. And their whole goal is to take this to the Supreme Court and basically make the case of like, you can't discriminate. Like if Brian and I decide we're family, we're family. Like that's the definition of family isn't that we're blood related, right? And so you are discriminating against people who are related and against people who are unrelated, and you're not allowed to do. So I could get super even more technical than I've gotten. But that is at a high level. We have our legal strategy. And then I'll say maybe the last kind of bow I'll put on this, because it is an important topic, is our team researches. So between me and my students, we're probably in 40 cities around the United States right now with co-living. And our teams will go in and we will research what we call the co-living friendliness. So this is my disclaimer to everything I just said. We will research the co-living friendliness of a city. Like, for example, Sarasota, Florida came out and said, we don't care if you guys have a good legal strategy. We're going to fight you. We do not want co-living in Sarasota. Guess a bunch of rich people that live on the beach. And so, you can go there, you can try the legal strategy, or you can just not fight the city and go somewhere else, right? Nashville, actually, believe it or not, Nashville, Tennessee. I don't know why. I'm not on the city's board meetings, but they were like, we hate this strategy. It's we're going to fight it. We know you've got a legal strategy to do it, and we're going to fight it. So there is also a lot of just go to a city that's really friendly to co-living, right? And Charlotte is very co-living friendly, right? Charlotte has some different rules depending on where you are, city, county, whatever. But there's a lot of places around the United States. Houston, super friendly to co-living, right? Just so yes. Maybe there's some research before you go buy 28 homes in a city. You should probably research what that city's take is on co-living, right? That's just a smart idea. But those are some, hopefully what I've done in this answer, Brian, is kind of give you some specific tactical legal things. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not giving legal advice. You can talk to my lawyer if you want to, but and then just some conceptual things. And then also, guys, you just have to realize that every freaking city in America is trying to increase density in the city to solve affordable housing. Every single one. Every one. Right? Charlotte just came out. Duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes on any single family lot. You can do it. It's fine. We need more housing in the city. That's a new, right? That's the new UDO with Charlotte, right? Everybody's trying to do it. And it's just that this hasn't taken that, like, not everybody has wrapped their head around co-living as a strategy for that yet. But that is my long-winded way to answer your question. I hope that helps in some way.
And that's what Pad Split does. You sign a lease with them, and then they bring the members in. So I'm assuming you have a separate LLC that buys the houses.
That's right.
And your operating company is the one that is the lease with, and then you have the members. Is that right?
That's 100% right.
I got it.
You're 100%.
I got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the membership concept because it fixes so much. Eviction. There's nobody to evict because they don't have a lease, so now they're trespassing, right?
That's right.
There's the even fair housing.
That's right.
Is another thing. There's no lease involved, and everybody needs to keep that in their head. There's not a lease, so there's that wipes out a whole lot. And another thing people were asking about, are you putting more than one person in a room? And you're not allowing families or anything like that, right?
Yeah, the only way we'll ever do that is if there's a private entrance and a private bath, at least for our company. That just streamlines it as best as possible. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Rick, you're next.
Yeah, thanks, Wendy, and this is great. So this is very top of mind for me, and I'm just thinking more from on a practical level. So my oldest son had friends that he moved out, and they roomed together, and that at a couple of years into it, that kind of fizzled, and he looked to move someplace else into what he could afford, and of course he didn't have friends that he knew that they can kind of get together on. So my big question is, when we went to Apartment Finder and we went to all this stuff, I didn't see this option anywhere. So my question is, how are you bringing people together to do this? So this was completely unknown to us, and we researched far and wide for a place for him to land.
Yeah. So basically, how are we advertising this? I mean, we're advertising it on a lot of different platforms, but probably the top, and there's probably 16 websites that have popped up in the last 3 months that are all co-living specific advertising, right? Because this is just becoming popular. Zillow just created a space. So, I mean, again, this is new. I mean, I'm talking months old, not years old, but like in the last 6 months, Zillow did not have an option for you to list a room for rent on Zillow. You could rent an apartment, but as of right now, they now have an option. You can list a room for rent on Zillow. So again,
and Sam, let me ask a follow-up, and then I know the other guys have questions too. But so on average, what is a 1-bedroom room costing people in the Charlotte area? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, there's nuances to how we price it, but as a general rule of thumb, your pricing for a room is going to be anywhere from 60 to 70% of what a studio apartment goes for in that area. But in Charlotte, it could be on the low end, $750. On the high end, if you have a private bath and a big room, it could be $1,000 for a private bath, a master room. And those are utilities included pricing. So there's a little bit of a skewing of maybe an apartment where you'd pay for the price plus utilities. But in Charlotte, for example, it's going to be $700 to $1,000.
You've got them paying by the month rather than the week.
Yeah, there's some companies out there that tell you to do it by the week. I'm a really big fan of like this feeling like their room is the new apartment. So they sign a 12-month membership agreement. This is not an Airbnb weekly rental. Like, I want you to live here for years. And we do. We have members that live here for years. This is home. And maybe that's just where I come from. I lived in this for 13 and a half years. I'm like, if it's done well and it's clean and it's quiet and it's safe, and Rick, like you mentioned earlier, there's systems in place to manage the tenants and people are getting along, like, it's a cheap place to live. You get to spend more money on experiences. My millennial generation, they all want to just spend money on experiences. They don't want to spend money on housing, right? This generation has kind of moved away from, I want this huge big house on the lake. Like, we want experiences. We want to travel. And so a lot of this is fitting into that model as well.
And you're vetting them just like you would.
Just like you would. Yeah.
Okay.
Background check, in-person showing, a screen interview. We send them a little video that explains the co-living concept, every lead. And by the way, like in Charlotte, we got 560 leads last month of people interested in rooms. So it's not like, it's not like, oh, we have 30 people interested. There's a huge demand for this in most cities, especially. But a lot of people aren't fully educated on what it is. So we have a really cool like educational video that just explains the concept really quickly so that people can make a quick decision whether or not want to continue with their application process. And it's kind of hard. It's like, this is no drugs, no smoking. These are the house rules in the home, but like, here's the cool benefits of it. It's a really cool little kind of explainer video that we send to every lead we get. But yeah, vetting them just like normal.
Okay. I'm going to slay your name too. Askenzes.
Wendy, that was pretty good. That wasn't too bad. Sam, I can relate a lot of what you're saying because we've been doing this for the past 4 years. This is just an idea.
Nice.
Of what we've done in the past. The idea behind our model is we want people to live there for years. One of the things that we've done is we've worked closely with SSI and disability.
Yeah.
And I've got one member that he's been with us for the past 4 years. And ideally, when the market went up, this is what kept us afloat and grew our cash flow exponentially. And we recently just worked on a home where we just added an extra bedroom. And people may not realize this, but adding one home after a remodel can make a world of difference as far as cash flow goes. So I can relate a lot to what you're saying, and it has been really what's kept our company afloat. And it also provides, when we're buying a home, it provides options for us. For instance, we have one home where it was a 2-bedroom home, and we converted it to a 4-bedroom.
Yeah,
and added an extra bathroom. Right.
That's awesome.
So grew our cash flow exponentially. Just wanted to throw that comment out there that disability is also a good way to go after you vet your members. But I just wanted to throw that comment out there. Love what you're preaching, man.
Well, I think it's a really interesting point that you make, that there's a whole conversation that we just don't have time for today that is exactly that, man. It's this whole conversation of like, for example, I have one of my developer friends is building these duplexes that I told you I'm building, but I learned a lot from him. He's building them in LA, and he's building bigger ones than I'm talking about, guys. He's building a duplex that's 32 bedrooms, so 16 on each side with 16 baths on each side. It's insane. Fully permitted, fully through the city in LA. And guess who he's renting them to? The city of LA. He gets a master lease from the city of LA, and they use it for homeless, right? So it's like, my point in saying that is, man, like, yeah, there's all these other exit strategies. I was hearing one of my students the other day was telling me that they're renting their co-living home to a hospital who needs like, they don't want to take up a bed. And I never heard of this before. He said they don't want to take up a bed in the hospital. So but they're not like completely outpatient. So they're like in between. So they need to monitor them. So so he's renting his rooms to them. And I was like, what? And they're renting like just some crazy amount of money, right? And I was like, so he's using his co-living. So there's all these other ways, right? Everybody's probably heard of sober living homes, right? That's another kind of nuance or niche of the strategy. Now, I don't do any of that. We do workforce housing. Like, it is open, you have a job, you got income, you want a clean, quiet, safe place to live. Boom. Like, and I think that's the biggest market that needs this, right? So I can get 560 leads because that's what we're going after. It's just pure workforce housing. But absolutely, man, there's all these other niches. There's tons of these different grants and places that will pay, and the housing choice vouchers that we talked about earlier on this call. Whole huge strategy.
One of the things that we did, Sam, was the market here in Huntsville, Alabama is a little bit different depending on where your home is. So we studied the market. So for instance, we have several houses that is just for the workforce. And then in areas where we have more bus stops and a little bit more of a metro area, we target the SSI or disability folks.
Yeah.
And going back to the marketing and how you put that information out there, I've had a lot of success with Craigslist and Facebook Market, believe it or not.
Yes. Facebook Marketplace is a huge source of leads.
Mm-hmm.
Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Zillow, Trulia, Hot Pads, right? This is kind of going to his question about marketing, right? There's one called Seartrue. There's a website that only does room rentals called Zumper. Believe it or not, that's a room rental site. There's a ton of them out there. If you guys want to get the best places to market your co-living home on, here's the hack. Just go to Google and Google room for rent and then insert your city. Whatever pulls up on the first 2 pages of Google, that's where you want to be on, because that's already what's being advertised, right?
Beautiful.
So there's the hack. Yeah, man. Great to meet you, and congrats on all your success. That's amazing.
I appreciate it, Sam. Thanks, guys.
One question that I keep hearing, and yes, thank you for those comments. That's really awesome to hear that it's successful everywhere. Cleaning, that has got to be a problem with people not keeping the kitchen clean, not keeping their bathrooms clean. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, we have several strategies. And by the way, I'm glad you mentioned this because there's the three things you have to do to scale co-living. If you don't have any of these three things, it blows up badly in a bad way. It's clean, and then it's quiet. So you have to have systems to keep it quiet, and then systems to keep it safe, right? Cameras, door, digital door locks, all that stuff that we do to keep it safe. But on the clean side, we have three big strategies. One, we set really clear expectations from the beginning. It's actually things they have to initial in the membership agreement. And one of them is they have to contribute to the cleaning of the home. Now, they can opt out for a fee. And a lot of people will choose, hey, I'm not into chores. But initially, they have to do something once a week to keep the common area clean. They'll opt out. It's $50 a month to opt out of that, like, support cleaning for the home. And then we will use that money to just hire someone for their week. And for the longest time, we did that for probably up until about 10, maybe even 15 homes, and it worked. As we scaled, we have plenty of cash flow in the home, so we hired professional cleaners, and professional cleaners now come in 1 to 2 times per. In addition to that strategy of having like a checklist that people are on, we have professional cleaners come in once or twice a month, and they clean common areas only and shared bathrooms, right? So it's not even like a full house cleaning; it's common areas and shared bathrooms. So the third thing is like our biggest rule is like absolutely zero personal items in the common space. That could be a dish, that could be, we're so strict about this rule that like when our cleaner comes in, if there's a personal item hanging on the couch, they put it in a bin, they leave a little note that says, remember, this is a co-living space, no items allowed to the personal space. And if that thing is in the bin next week, they throw it out. And that could be, I mean, it's, so they're like, please, if it's, people get that pretty fast. They take their stuff. We have one home because we don't put any TVs in the common area either, just to reduce conflict and reduce noise. So we have this one home, they watch WrestleMania like every week, but one guy brings his TV out from his room, sets it up, and then puts it back in his room. And it's like that's kind of what you want, right? There's still the community, but you want that common area to be popping and clean. And when you're coming in to do a showing, it needs to smell good. And so absolutely, there's a lot more I could go into, but those are kind of three big strategies. We have a checklist that people contribute to that they can opt out of. We have professional cleaners that we do once or twice a month. And then in addition to that, we have a pretty strict set the expectations from the beginning kind of thing.
Yeah, respectful for each other, with each other. Okay, yeah. Lou from Texas.
Good morning, everyone. So I have a high-end property in Houston that I'm super interested in doing, but all of these apartments has been built around where the house is located. So I'm having a little trouble renting it out to just one family. That's why I'm interested. I will be in touch. But I guess my question is, can you rattle off maybe the top 10 issues, concerns that someone like myself would have from going from traditional just one family to this model?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. The first thing that scares me about that is when you said high end. The reason I say that is because one of the things I teach a lot of is when somebody buys a co-living home, the number one thing I have them check, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I need to update my slide, is the truth, but does it fit the neighborhood? And maybe if they did build a bunch of apartments around this high end home, maybe it would fit the neighborhood. But I had a student the other day, so I teach this so much. I'm like, does it fit the neighborhood? Like if you go into this neighborhood and like everybody's grass is perfectly cut and everybody's got the white picket fence, run away. If I drive into a neighborhood and like that guy's grass is a little long, that guy's got a work truck in his yard, I'm like, yeah, this is my co-living neighborhood. I had a student recently who was looking for a co-living home. He just closed on his third one in Charleston, South Carolina, and he went on this neighborhood and there was a goat in the yard of one of the neighbors, and he took a video of it and he sent it to me and he's like, Sam, perfect for co-living. And I was like, we laughed, and obviously he's taking the concept to an extreme, but there is such a thing as like it can be a pain in the butt with neighbors, with parking, with all these different things if it truly is a high-end NIMBY type of a neighborhood, right? So that is definitely a something we take into consideration. So I'm saying that out there as a caveat, as a warning, as just something to think about. But if you still decide to move forward with it regardless, and you feel like it does fit the neighborhood, I think I could give you 10 things, but I'll just give you maybe the top 1 or 2. I think the top 1 would probably just be you have to handle tenants. You have to handle tenant disputes. And you have to have a system for every single one of those. So like it could be simple as like someone leaving food out. So this is why there's still cash flow in this asset class, by the way, because not everybody has figured out, like when an asset gets to a point where everybody's figured out how to do it, like Airbnb, for example, and then it's like it immediately gets saturated and, everybody gets into it. Well, that's why you can still find a home on market with thousands of dollars in cash flow right now, because everybody hasn't figured out how to do it. There's nuances to it. There's a little system. There's a little figuring it out, And not everybody can do that. Not everybody's willing to do that. One of the biggest things you got to be willing to do is you got to be able to handle, someone smoking in the house when they shouldn't smoke in the house. You got to be able to handle Johnny leaving his food on the kitchen floor. You got to be able to handle this. And we've had a decade of this. So we have, every script possible, imagine, we limit the number of overnight guests that they can have to 5 per month. And we don't like super strict enforce it, but we enforce it when someone complains about it, right? Only like, hey, he's got his girlfriend over here all the time. So you have to be able to handle that. And that's not normally something you have to handle in a single family rental, right? But you have 10 people sharing a home, you've got to have a script, you've got to have a warning, you've got to be able to find them, which our membership agreements allow us to find them. And then you got to, in those cases where someone's bad fit for the culture, you've got to be able to say, I'm exercising my right to terminate this membership. You got 30 days to get out. And we give them 30 days so they can find another place. We could do it sooner than that, but we only give them 30 days to get out. So like those are nuances that not everybody's willing to tackle. And so if you're willing to tackle that,
So it's sounding like there's more management involved.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
I would argue, though, and I'll say there's one thing, Wendy, and I'll turn it back over to you. I would argue in some ways there is less management from a capital expenditure standpoint than a multifamily unit. Here's what I mean. If I have 8 people living in a home and you, Lou, from Texas, went out and bought an 8-unit multifamily, we both have 8 tenants to deal with, or members, but tenants. Let's call them tenants for sake. But I have 1 HVAC unit, maybe 2. I have 1 refrigerator, maybe 2. I have 1 dishwasher. I have 1 stove. You have 8 stoves. Yeah. You have 8 refrigerators. You have 8 HVAC units, right? Yeah. And so in some respects, I think the co-living model is actually less management from a capital expenditure standpoint. But yes, from a tenant or member management standpoint, it is definitely higher.
Interesting. Okay. Do you have some sort of coaching that you do? Do you have training, webinars, events? How can people learn how can people continue to suck all of this out of your brain?
Yeah, I would say, and somehow I logged into my wife's Zoom account this morning, so I paid no attention to the little icon of where I'm posting this, but I think just texting the word co-living, you'll get a 3-part training that goes a little deeper. You'll get our co-living calculator. You can follow me on Instagram. And then I will drop this. I don't normally drop this right off the bat, but I every so often I do these 5-day challenges. Ted, I think, who's on here, has been with me the whole week on this, because I've been doing one this week. And so it's an hour or an hour and a half of training every single day, and it's a free event. You can buy this like $27 little upsell, but it's a free event. It's live, and you go to www.scaleyourrealestate.
You're writing it down.
.com. I'll drop it. I just dropped it in the chat, guys. So www.scaleyourrealestate.com, and that's where you get on the waiting list for the next one. We're almost done with the one this week. So I would just recommend getting on the waiting list for the next one. Scale Your Real Estate. Yes, sir.
Scaleyourrealestate.com.
Yeah.
www.scaleyourrealestate.com. And I'm saying that for the benefit of the Facebook folks, because I don't have my double monitor, so I can't put it on the Facebook too. So if anybody else is on Facebook and can put that on there for me, it'd be great.
And Wendy, do you mind if I just address this septic question? I think Jenny and a couple of people have asked it. So some people in the chat are asking about septics.
Text co-living.
Yeah, you can also do that. That's another thing. If you text co-living,
I have a phone number.
There's a phone number. The phone number for the text co-living is 704-610-0425. 704-610-0425. Go ahead.
Yeah. So and if you text the word co-living, make sure you text the word co-living so you get the response on that. But
co-living.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So septic systems, people ask me this all the time. Hey, can I do co-living on a septic? Will it get overrun? I don't know how many people on this call who here grew up on a septic. Did anybody here grow up yeah, Wendy, me, I did. Yeah. So I am one of 8. Yeah. So yeah, same. I had 8 brothers and sisters, 2 parents. That's 10 people. We were on a 3-bedroom septic system, and we were homeschooled, so we never left the house. And it never overflowed, y'all. And it was cheap as heck. I
Same.
love septic systems. Like, it is way cheaper than city sewer. So I have no problem with septic systems. I love them. Even to replace like a whole septic system is like, 4 or 5,000. It's not like 20, 30 grand usually, right? It's, if it's the tank, it's a couple grand. And it's like, okay, but I'm not paying $200 to $300 a month for sewer. Like that adds up pretty fast.
Yeah.
So I have 10-bedroom homes on a septic. I have a 9-bedroom home in Charlotte on a septic, co-living homes. I love them. I don't have any issues with them. Maybe pump them a little bit more often, but I have not had any issues with septic systems, and we've used them a decent amount. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Awesome.
And it might be 15 if you're like replacing all the lines and all of that. But if you're just replacing a tank, I just replaced one the other day for, it was a new home I bought, so it wasn't because I messed it up, but it was I think $4,500 or $4,000. It was cheap.
Well, Sam, would you be willing to come back again in a few months?
Yeah.
I mean, what I'd like to look, I got double thumbs up everywhere. So what I'd really like is to get updates on what you're building and how that's working out for you. We'd love to get some updates on that. Congratulations. You now have the longest sunrisers we've ever had.
Oh my God. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Hey, real fun, just for fun, just because I pulled this up. I'll flash it real fast.
Okay.
This is the building we're building. So I'll show you the outside first. So here's the side. Where's the front? Hold on. There's got to be a picture of the front on here somewhere. There it is. There's the back. It's a very basic building. This one's going to be built in Charlotte. But here's the floor plan. I think this is what you guys will find the most interesting. Zoom in just for a second. So, here's the duplex. So here's the wall in the middle. This is the first floor. You walk in. Oh, no, sorry. This is the upstairs. This is the top floor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice we did name one game room, but that's for certain people in the city to look at. And then here's the main floor. Here's the living room. You got the 2 fridges already. Notice how many bathrooms there are, right? Here's 3 bedrooms or a library and an office, whichever you want. And then we have downstairs is 1, 2 is going to be 3 bedrooms and another separate little living room. So it's just a real beautiful, simple building that will end up being. This will be 17 rooms.
Wow. Yeah. When do you project that to be done?
Done probably a freaking year from now, but like we do plan on breaking ground we plan on breaking ground by April, so that's the new plan. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Well, I definitely want to have you back. I know that it's a huge interest on it, and I'd really love to possibly talk to you about doing an event where you're just teaching this. Are you doing that now?
Yeah, virtual events. Yeah.
So I'd like to see us do one live in Charlotte for a couple of days.
That'd be cool.
So I'm going to reach out to you and see if we can't make that happen, because we could fill a room with no problem on this.
Yeah.
This has been like kudos, unbelievable.
Thank you for your guys' time and attention. This was an honor. Yeah, I'm sorry if I went too long.
I
got passionate.
I promise you didn't. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that presentation. Now go share this video with somebody that needs to hear about the amazing opportunity, the opportunity to get the highest amount of cash flow in the marketplace today that's stable in the real estate marketplace today. That's what I believe is the opportunity of co-living. Please go share this video, give us a subscribe, like this video, whatever, but just please come back for more content, as we are the #1 authority in co-living content right now anywhere in the United States. And we're proud of that. We'll keep putting out amazing content just like this.